Which wide receivers should you count on for week 17 of the fantasy football season to get you that championship trophy? We're about to tell you. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're here to break down every matchup for week 17 and talk about the wide receivers that you should start or sit. Let's talk about the players that we think should be in your lineup. But first, these are the guys you don't need to worry about. Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and A.J. Brown. All right, let's kick it off with a Thursday night matchup. That would be the Cowboys at the Titans. CeeDee Lamb, clearly a stud. Michael Gallup is the number 2 guy there. Can you trust him in week 17?
Trust is a strong word, but this is a good matchup. We know what he can do. We know he can score. High upside, risky flex play this week.
I mean, look, you don't know what you're going to get. His target share has been pretty inconsistent all year, and you don't know how game flow will go. But I do see a path for him to have a big game. I know there's risk, but he's a flex play that I kind of like this week. And then there's Treylon Burks, who is so good, but his quarterback is just not. I mean, let's face it. I don't think he or anybody on Tennessee is startable with Malik Willis at quarterback.
No, not startable. Malik Willis completed 14 passes last week, which felt like a miracle. You're really banking on a big play from Treylon Burks, not starting him.
Cardinals taking on the Falcons. DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, the floor just keeps getting lower each week. You'd think he'd be a safe pick, but with Trace McSorley at quarterback, it was not the case. How good can you feel about him this week?
Well, if it's Trace McSorley, again, you can't start him, even in a great matchup. I mean, 10 targets, 1 catch. Trace McSorley is not it. But I'm pretty hopeful that it'll be Colt McCoy. Remember, it was a concussion. He did return to practice late last week. He should clear. If it's Colt McCoy, you have to start DeAndre Hopkins against the Falcons in this matchup.
That's the thing. It's the Falcons secondary. You know they've been one of the worst against wide receivers specifically. So, knock on wood, let's hope McCoy is back. If so, yes, I'm firing up Hopkins. If it's McSorley, I think you can still start Hopkins, but man, just no more than a wide receiver 3, which is crazy. What about Hollywood Brown? If McCoy is back, you feel good about him too?
I do. I mean, not as good as I do about Hopkins, but I still think if Colt McCoy is back in this matchup, Hollywood Brown is a good start.
Yeah, and it's good to see that at least trying to get involved. They're giving the ball kind of like end arounds, and he'll get those short intermediate targets. He can always make a play with his speed, so he's still playable. Again, kind of that wide receiver 3 range for me. And then we do have to talk about Greg Dortch. 9 catches, 91 yards? I mean, do you think that gets better or worse if McCoy comes back?
Well, that's the thing. See, Greg Dortch is like the opposite of the other 2 guys. If it's Trace McSorley, you should feel great about Greg Dortch. But if it's Colt McCoy, please don't play Greg Dortch. Don't chase that game. That was only because Trace McSorley was in there. We saw 2 weeks ago when it was Colt McCoy, he did nothing. So only if Trace McSorley plays, then you can start Greg Dortch.
And this what's so aggravating for me is because a couple weeks ago when it was McCoy in at quarterback, I thought Greg Dortch would have a big game because McCoy is a guy, they're having him pull the trigger really quick, get the ball out of his hands. I thought Dortch would benefit like he did last week. So I actually started him when he gave you 0 points 2 weeks ago, and he was on my bench when he got 20 points this week. I don't know what to make of him. I know he's just a desperation flex and only in full PPR leagues. And then Drake London has really been coming on the last couple of weeks. Maybe not a coincidence since Marcus Mariota has not been the quarterback. So how do you feel about London this week?
Yeah, I mean, you can't feel, great about him because, yes, he's getting targets and that's there. But this isn't an offense that's going to give him opportunities to score 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game. Even 1 touchdown feels like a stretch, but he has a nice high floor. I think he's, a good start this week.
I mean, I feel pretty good. He's getting a ton of targets. Like you said, the scoring upside obviously isn't there as it is with some other receivers. But I like the way they're using London finally. I think he's a pretty solid play this week. I put him in the wide receiver 3 range as well. Steelers at the Ravens. George Pickens has reemerged, maybe because Kenny Pickett was back at quarterback. Do you feel like Pickens can do something against Baltimore?
I don't know. On the road, Baltimore's defense getting better. I mean, yeah, he did something last week, but not a lot. So I don't think I'm rolling with George Pickens in my championship.
I mean, he's always going to be a boom bust type, and although the matchup on paper isn't terrible, yeah, it's way too much risk for me. This particular week, you need to get it right. You need some sort of floor. Usually I'll say chase the upside. I'm not chasing this. And then what about Deontay Johnson? Thought was he in a great spot last week? Not so much. Do you feel like you can feel a little bit better about him?
I mean, you could probably feel better about him in the sense that he has a higher floor than Pickens, but he has, at least Pickens has scored, 2 touchdowns this year now? Deontay still has 0. Hard to see that changing this week. I need more upside. I'm not starting Deontay Johnson this week.
Exactly what I'm thinking. This is not the time to go for those safe few points. Literally zero scoring upside for Deontay Johnson. How's that going to change now against Baltimore, which is pretty good defensively, gotten better against wide receivers? I'm going to have to pass. And then Bears at Lions. No Bears receivers worth talking about. But on the Lions side, you know you're good with the Sun God. Are you good with DJ Chark?
Yeah, I like DJ Chark a lot this week. We saw it, a couple weeks ago, had some nice games, had a nice bounce back game last week. Now they're at home against a bad Bears defense. Not a must start, of course, but an upside kind of flex play.
I think he's got a lot of upside. Liking Chark a lot this week. So, again, depends how deep you have to go, how deep of a league you're in. But, look, I think there's a lot of potential here. Chark is a guy I would try to find a way to put in my lineup if I needed to. Jaguars at the Texans. Here we go. Who do you trust? Let's start with Christian Kirk, the man of mystery. How will he do against Houston?
Yeah, who knows? He should do well, but who knows? I mean, last week, Jets, tough matchup, but Lawrence looked good. The offense looked good. They were able to move the ball. I mean, they couldn't finish drives, but they were able to move the ball. I think you still got to roll with Christian Kirk and just take whatever he gives you because the upside is there.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what you're going to get, but there is definitely, on paper, potential for a big game here. Houston, look, they've been fighting. They've been better lately. Actually, somehow got a win, but it's not a great defense. So Kirk, risky, but high upside flex play for me. Zay Jones, I'll say I feel a little bit better about. I mean, do you feel, though, he's kind of the same?
Yeah, I don't know if I feel better or worse about him, but, I mean, last week did not like him at all. This week, definitely a better spot for him. You can start him again.
I think the big question is how much is Jacksonville going to have to throw the ball, or will they choose to throw the ball? Again, Houston not letting teams just run all over him. Jacksonville just loving to throw the ball these days. So I feel pretty solid about Zay Jones. Not more than a flex, but I feel like he's a more solid flex. I kind of feel a little bit better about him than Kirk because his target share has been better throughout the latter part of the year. And then on the other side, Brandon Cooks, welcome back. I mean, he, after missing a couple weeks, actually made somewhat of a splash in fantasy. Can he do something this week?
I mean, it's the Jags. He should be able to. You never know what you're going to get with this Texans team and Brandon Cooks. But, again, another guy, not a guy you have to start, but as an upside flex play, I do like him this week.
Yeah, I mean, look, they don't really have a running game, like, at all, since Pierce has been out, and they really don't have anyone else to throw to because Nico Collins is out. So, by that alone, you feel like he should get the volume. He's definitely got some upside. So, I think he's flexible. We got Indy going to take on the Giants in New York or New Jersey. Michael Pittman, I mean, look, at this point, can we even consider starting him based on what's going on over there?
I mean, unless they somehow go back to Matt Ryan, but he wasn't even active in Week 16, so that's probably unlikely. It's either going to be, Nick Foles throwing interceptions or Sam Ehlinger not even throwing the ball. I don't think I could start Michael Pittman in Week 17.
I mean, you'd think even with Nick Foles or whoever, at least you could kind of trust Pittman to have a floor. It looks like there is no floor. It looks like you can't do anything with these Colts at this point in the season. So I'm just going to have to say no, can't do it. And then we suddenly have a bunch of pass catchers to talk about for the Giants who decided to throw it a ton last week. So let's start with Darius Slayton. Didn't go off, but still had a decent amount of yardage against the Colts. How do you feel?
I mean, you can't feel great. He's going to see a lot of Stephon Gilmore. And was third on the team in targets last week. So always has a potential for a big play, but that's it. I'm going to say a flex start only.
Yeah, I think I'll go a little farther and say I'm not going to start him because, like you said, I liked him a lot when he was kind of the only act in town. Like, they weren't really throwing to other receivers because they didn't really have anybody else, but those other guys are stepping up. There's another receiver I like better on the Giants this week, so I will pass on Slayton, especially because he might get a fair amount of Gilmore. And then Isaiah Hodgins, the guy who has really kind of ramped up in usage the last couple of weeks. Do you feel any better about him?
Man, I mean, maybe he keeps it going, but you really want Isaiah Hodgins in your lineup with a championship on the line? That feels way too risky for me. Desperation flex.
It is risky, and again, look at the Giants at home against the Colts, so they're really going to have to go to that pass-heavy of a script. Probably not. I think Hodgins is okay if you really need to flex. Maybe you're in a deep league, but yeah, a lot of risk there. The guy I like a little bit better is Richie James, and I'll tell you why, because he's the slot receiver. The Colts have had issues there at slot corner with Kenny Moore being banged up. He saw the most targets of them, all these Giants receivers last week. So, again, I'm not going to say he's more than a flex play, but I feel like he's kind of the best of those options. Would you agree with that?
I do. I agree. Just a flex play, but out of these three, he's the best flex play.
Broncos at the Chiefs. Now look, maybe I wrote Jerry Jeudy off too soon. Another pretty good game. And of course, you remember, last time facing the Chiefs, had a 3-touchdown game. How high can you be on Jerry Jeudy?
I mean, I don't think he's going for 3 touchdowns again, but I think you can feel pretty good about him. He's a good start this week.
I mean, I feel like this is going to be prime letdown territory just because you look at what he's done and you think like, oh, finally I can trust the Broncos pass catcher, but I can't just ignore the numbers and dismiss him. I'm going to say Jerry Jeudy, a solid start this week. And then what about Courtland Sutton? I mean, he did something, and I wondered, do you feel like this passing game will be any different under an interim head coach?
Probably not. I'm not expecting them all of a sudden to, be this incredible offense. Yeah, Courtland Sutton a flex at best.
Well, I will say I definitely feel better about Jeudy than Sutton. Sutton doesn't seem to be 100%. I'm just going to go ahead and say I will sit Sutton, even though I feel pretty good about Jeudy. And then there's Juju Smith-Schuster. Did not go off last week. What do you think he does against this Broncos defense, which is still one of the toughest against receivers?
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, Juju had a nice game against him last time as well. And that's the thing with Juju. Like, it's not a guy you have to start, but I feel like every week he's a good start because he has upside. And kind of like Christian Kirk, you just got to put him in your lineup. Some weeks he's not going to give you anything, but some weeks he's going to help you win. Not a must start, but a good start.
Well, just like Christian Kirk in the sense that you either be very happy or very angry that you have him in your lineup. I just feel like there's so much risk here, and I know that it doesn't always go the way we think it is, but I'm going to try to avoid Juju in my lineup if possible this week. And then there's Kadarius Toney, who barely touches the ball but finds a way to score last week. Is Toney flexible?
No, he scored a touchdown and got you, 7 PPR points or 8 PPR points? Like, only played 30% of the snaps. Even if that goes up to 50, you can't feel great about him. I'm not starting Kadarius Toney.
No, still zero interest in Toney. Really only talking about him because, people are going to ask. Dolphins taking on the Patriots, which is suddenly a very important game for the playoff implications. Miami might be back to a third-string quarterback because Tua looks like he's in the concussion protocol. So, what do we do with Jalen Waddle?
I mean, if it's Tua, I think you have to start Jalen Waddle. If it's Teddy, I mean, I still think you kind of have to roll with Jalen Waddle, but I mean, certainly you're going to be nervous, but I think either way you got to start him.
That's the thing. I mean, is it going to be Teddy or is it going to be Skylar Thompson? And is this offense even going to do anything on the road in Foxborough? I mean, I know Waddle is hard to sit, and I probably would have to have really much better options out there. I'm nervous about Waddle, but I still would say I guess he's startable. And on the other side, Jacoby Myers. Just when we've written him off, it looks like he's back. Do you feel like he's somebody you can trust against the Dolphins?
I mean, if you could trust a guy to catch a deflected, bomb that lands in his lap for a touchdown, sure. But I'm not banking on him doing that again. I know it's the Dolphins. I know they're susceptible to the pass, but this isn't a guy that hits big plays. He needs a ton of volume. I'm not starting Jacoby Myers.
I mean, I've kind of liked Myers for most of the season. It's been so up and down, of course, this whole team. I think Myers is in a pretty good spot. It looks like he is healthy, and I think that was really the issue when he kind of disappeared for those few weeks. So I'm going to say I kind of like Myers as a high-end flex play. New Orleans traveling to Philadelphia. Chris Olave, it's looking kind of iffy if he plays this week after missing last week. If he does suit up against the Eagles, would you play him?
No, I mean, terrible matchup. Probably less than 100%. I don't know what this Saints team is trying to do right now. I'm not starting Chris Olave.
I mean, it almost looks like the Saints team is trying to tank, but even if Olave plays, he's not going to be fully healthy. Terrible matchup. You can't play Olave. As good as he is, you can't trust him on your fantasy team. And on the other side, I think it's safe to say we can trust Devontae Smith. I mean, the way he's been playing lately, he's almost a no-doubt must-start.
Yeah, I don't even see how you could bench Devonta Smith. Gardner Minshew, Jalen Hurts, matchup, doesn't matter. This guy's a stud. You got to start him.
Panthers going to take on the Bucs. Very important game for those two teams. Will we see a lot of DJ Moore, and how confident are you in him?
Will we see a lot? No, because this team doesn't really throw a lot, and the Bucs aren't an offense that will force him to throw a lot. How confident am I? Mildly confident. He's been good the last 2 weeks, but this is definitely a tougher matchup. I'm going to say DJ Moore this week is a flex play.
Well, I really liked DJ Moore last week, and he came through. I don't like him as much this week, but I still put him in the wide receiver 3 range. He's the number one guy there. I mean, really, nobody else to even threaten his target share. I don't think they'll be able to sit back and run the ball nearly as much as they did last week. So I feel like DJ Moore, maybe not in a smash spot, but I think he's a pretty good start. And then Chris Godwin. I mean, if there's one guy you can feel good about in Tampa's offense, it's him. Is he pretty much a must start?
I mean, you can feel good about him in the sense that he's going to catch a lot of passes. Not going to rack up huge yardage total, and I mean, who even knows about touchdowns? But I think in a PPR league, he's a good start.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a good start. He's the one guy I don't have too many concerns with. And then there's Mike Evans. I mean, just when he thought he might be back, another total dud. I mean, can you put him in your lineup with the championship on the line?
Man, this is crazy. I don't know if you can. Obviously, I'm not outright benching him for, I'm not going to bench him for a guy like Isaiah Hodgins or somebody like that. But man, flex play at best.
Now, the last time these two teams played, which was several weeks ago, he did go for 96 yards on 9 catches, but that feels like a long time ago, and that was back when Tampa still seemed like they had a good offense. It's just so risky. And look, there was a team where I just thankfully advanced. I had Mike Evans in my lineup. I had 5 guys on the bench that all outscored him by double digits. I don't know if I could do it. I don't want to say he's an absolute must bench, but man, I would find it really hard to put him in my starting lineup with everything on the line. Brown's going to take on the Commanders. Amari Cooper, I mean, obviously that massive ceiling is gone with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, go figure. But he did at least something last week. Can he do anything against the Commanders?
I don't know. Now they're back on the road in a tough matchup, tough defense. He almost feels like Mike Evans to me, just with in the games with Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, he was a beast before Deshaun Watson, but feels like one of those guys you feel like, I can't bench him, and then you wish you had benched him. He does nothing, and now they're on the road. Deshaun Watson's been terrible. I'm just going to put him as a flex play.
Yeah, risky at that. So, exactly. And I forgot about that road split. Remember, we had thought we could forget about it, but it looks like that one big game was an outlier. I don't know. I think you can play Cooper, but I hope you have somebody that feels a lot safer. DPJ, that would be Donovan Peoples-Jones. Do you feel any better about him?
Nah, just when it looked like he might be the one guy you could feel okay about, you can't feel okay about him anymore. And again, a tough matchup on the road. Not starting him.
Nah, I think his intriguing upside that we had seen for a few weeks is not there this week. I can't start DPJ. And now in Washington, look, there's also a question about who will be quarterback for them going into this week. Taylor Heineke, not doing so great these days, but either way, let's talk about Terry McLaurin against Cleveland. Still a solid start?
I guess, but I mean, it's funny because last year everybody wanted Terry McLaurin to get away from Taylor Heineke, and then this year, earlier in the year, they wanted him to get away from Carson Wentz. And now you might be going back to Carson Wentz. And one thing about the Browns, they have Denzel Ward. They have a good corner on the outside there. I think you can still start him, but I don't love him this week.
No, I don't think you can either way. I'll say I feel a little bit better about Terry than like Amari Cooper or Mike Evans, but I don't think he's an auto start either. I think he's kind of a low-end wide receiver 3. And then Jahan Dotson, look, I'll say I actually feel better about Dotson than McLaurin. He's been coming on lately, getting a ton of targets. And you remember early in the year when Wentz was the quarterback, he was doing pretty well. He's actually scored in 3 straight games. But how high can you be on Dotson?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he's really going under the radar here. Not a lot of people looking at him, but he's been really good. Not a must start, of course. I would still start Terry over him, but I think he's a good flex start.
Depending on how things shake out, I mean, yeah, I know it'd be hard to put Dotson in over McLaurin, but look, it would not surprise me at all if Dotson outproduced McLaurin this week. And then there's Curtis Samuel. Where does he fall?
Yeah, he can always do something. He can always do nothing. He was really good early in the year with Carson Wentz, remember? So maybe there's some hope there, but are you banking on that, in your championship? And this even assumes it's Carson Wentz. We don't know yet. Yeah, not desperation flex. I'll put him as a desperation flex.
Well, maybe I'm feeling too good about Washington this week, but they've got to win. Their offense, not great, right? It's a little inconsistent, but Samuel has been fairly consistent lately. I do think he's got an opening here for a good game, so I feel like he's a strong flex play. 49ers going to Vegas to take on the Raiders. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. I mean, this is a great spot for a receiver to produce against Vegas. Kind of did something last week, finally. Do you think that he is a solid starter in Week 17?
I can't call him a solid starter. I definitely saw more. I mean, what I saw last week was at least encouraging, but still, this is an offense that's going to, throw the ball 30 plus times, and they're probably not going to need to against the Raiders, so flex start.
I like Ayuk enough that I will call him a wide receiver 3 this week. The Raiders are very generous to wide receivers. Ayuk has been getting involved at least a little bit more. I think he's still pretty solid. He always has potential for a big player touchdown. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So in this case, I'll chase that upside. And then on the Raiders side, I mean, I guess we still have to start Devontae Adams, even though he's been really disappointing lately. Can you start Hunter Renfrow, who did score a touchdown last week?
He did. I mean, this might be a matchup where he can exploit it, right? Because another matchup where the 49ers, with Ward on the outside, maybe he kind of does a good job against Devontae Adams again, and Carr's forced to throw it to Renfrow, but just a desperation flex in PPR leagues.
Yeah, I think I need more upside here. I think he could come out with some points, but man, I need more. And look, Derek Carr is getting worse as the season goes on. This Raiders team looks like they might be throwing it in. So I'm going to say no to Renfro. And I'm just going to go ahead and say Matt Collins, although he's had some moments throughout the season, I've got to say no to him too.
Yeah, hard pass on Matt Collins.
Jets taking on the Seahawks. Good news, everyone. Mike White is back. At least it looks that way. So if Mike White does play, does that make Garrett Wilson almost a must start?
I think so. I mean, Seattle has a good secondary, but I don't think it matters. It looks like it's Mike White. I think you fire up Garrett Wilson again.
Yeah, I think you have to. Again, anybody but Zach Wilson, and it looks like it is somebody else. Wilson back to the bench. Fire up Garrett Wilson for sure. DK Metcalf, I know it's the Jets, and it's really, really a tough spot for wide receivers, but I can't bench Metcalf.
Yeah, I don't think you can bench him, but man, definitely be prepared for a letdown.
And then Tyler Lockett, there's some talk that maybe he'll play. Look, Seattle needs to pull out a victory. Of course, so do the Jets for their playoff hopes. If Lockett plays, how do you feel about him?
Assuming he plays and like he's not wearing some cast where he can't catch, which I doubt they'd have him out there if he couldn't catch. I might feel a little bit better about him than even DK Metcalf because he's going to get out of the slot. Not that like this is a smash, slot matchup, but at least he's not going to get Sauce Gardner. But still, yeah, I think you got to roll with Lockett if he plays, but let down potential for sure.
Yeah, I'll say I feel like this is going to be one of the lower scoring games of the week. Metcalf, I know he's not going to go off. He didn't really go off against Kansas City in a great spot last week with all those targets. I feel like he has at least a decent floor play. I think Lockett does have a slightly higher ceiling, like you're saying, but I don't feel like it's that high. So, again, just kind of a low-end wide receiver 3. And then we got Vikings at Packers. It'll be interesting to see what this game turns out to be. Will it be a shootout between Cousins and Rodgers? So, KJ Osborne, of course, didn't follow up his huge week with a huge week, but he was still sort of involved. Do you think he'll do anything against the Pack?
Probably not. This is a pretty good secondary. Yeah, not risking it with KJ Osborne in my finals.
Way too risky. Like you said, maybe he does something, but maybe I'm not going to find out. So I'll just say no to Osborne. What about Adam Thielen?
Same. Way too risky to start him against a good secondary in the finals. No thanks.
Hoping for a touchdown is not the best strategy to go about when setting your lineup. So with Thielen, you're going to have to pass. Now, Green Bay side, it's going to be interesting to see. Let's start with Christian Watson. He left that game early on Sunday. He's been banged up throughout his rookie season. If he plays, it's such a good spot against Minnesota, but can you trust him?
I think you have to. It's such a good matchup, and the encouraging thing last week before he got hurt was, prior to it, he hadn't been getting a lot of targets. It had been like big plays, touchdowns. He was getting a ton of targets last week. He was going to have, a double-digit catch game potentially. So that's encouraging. He's got big playability. He's getting targets in the end zone, near the end zone. I think you have to start him if he plays.
Yeah. It's the Vikings. They're terrible against receivers. I can't keep that kind of potential on my bench. Maybe he doesn't go off, but I do want to find out. Now, with or without Watson, I will tell you also, I'm intrigued by Romeo Doubs because he's, maybe not putting up huge numbers, but it's the Vikings once again. And if Watson is out, I feel really good about Doubs.
Yeah, if Watson's out, I definitely feel better about him. But I think even with Watson, he's a flex start in this matchup.
And then there's Lazard, who all of a sudden kind of reemerging again. Can we feel good about all these receivers for the Packers?
Again, if Christian Watson is out, then I think you feel good about Lazard because now this kind of crowded wide receiver room gets less crowded. But again, just because of the matchup, I'll put him as a flex play.
Yeah, I'll agree. Flex play. I think in PPR, full PPR, I think I like Dobbs a little bit better. In half or standard, maybe better with Lazard for that touchdown upside. Rams at Chargers. No Ram receiver worth talking about. But we should talk about Mike Williams. I think we still have Keenan as a must start. He's been so involved. Mike Williams, is he going to boom or is he going to bust against the Rams?
I mean, that's the thing. You never know. And you never know what Rams, like, one week they look like they don't want to be out there, and then the next week against Denver, they look like they're playing for the Super Bowl. I think you got to roll with Mike Williams regardless because he has so much upside.
Yeah, and the Rams, despite how they look last week, is still a team that generally gives up yardage to receivers this year. And think even in that route, Jerry Jeudy put up over 100 yards on them. So I feel like you have to put that in your lineup. And then Monday night, we're going to be treated to the Bills at the Bengals. All sorts of receivers you're probably going to already have in your lineups. And then there's the guys like Gabe Davis. Did catch a touchdown last week. Does he do anything against Cincinnati?
Caught a touchdown, got you, 11 points? I mean, yeah, I'm not starting Gabe Davis.
This is one of those plays that looked so tempting in the preseason, especially for best ball, right? You thought Gabe Davis in this shootout of a game, and no, I don't think I can do it. I mean, there's way too much risk here. And then on the other side, you got Tyler Boyd. I don't know. I don't think he's playable either, even if this is a shootout.
No, he's kind of like Gabe Davis, right? Like every now and then he'll have this big game. You're like, oh, I wish I would have had him in my lineup. And then he goes out there and gets you 5 points when you start him. Yeah, not starting Tyler Boyd.
All right, now we got you covered for wide receivers as far as start sit advice. Don't worry, we're also here for you as far as running back, quarterback, tight end, everything else you need, waiver wire advice, and even defensive streamers. It's all here on our Week 17 playlist to help you take home that championship trophy.